Kuzangbo, Bhutan e-learning project welcomes you all to this lesson. I am going to take you through solving quadratic equation by factoring. I am Desup Rafiq Mohammed from Wanakha Central School. The topics that I will be covering are factoring quadratic expression using algebra tiles, factoring quadratic expression using algebraic model. Then we have factoring by using decomposition method, and finally we have solving quadratic equation by factoring. So to begin with, we have factoring quadratic expression using algebra tiles. Now, how would you use algebra tiles in factoring quadratic equation? What we can do is, we can represent our algebraic equation using the algebra tiles, and after that we can make a rectangle using those tiles. The dimensions of the rectangle will give us the factor. Let us see one example. We have a quadratic equation x square plus 3x plus 2. So we can represent this equation using the following tiles. You have x square tiles, 3x, and then plus 2. Now next we can create a rectangle using these tiles. So here we go, x square plus 3x, and then we have plus 2. So what do you think would be the dimensions of this rectangle? It would be x plus 1 and then x plus 2. So as the dimension of the rectangle formed represents the factor, therefore the factors of our quadratic equation x square plus 3x plus 2 are x plus 1 and x plus 2. Now how would you create a rectangle if some negatives are involved in our equation? When negatives are involved, we sometimes may have to add tiles to make a rectangle. Let us see one example. We have a quadratic equation x square plus x minus 2. Let us represent them with a tile. So you have x square tiles, x tiles, and then you have two negative tiles. Now let us try to make these algebra tiles into a rectangle. So here we go. We have x square tiles, x tiles, and then negative 2. Well, you can see this isn't a rectangle yet. So how do you think would you make this into a rectangle? Can we add a positive tile and a negative tile to it to make a rectangle? Of course, we can do that because plus 1x minus 1x equals to 0, which is called 0 principle, and it still doesn't change the value of our quadratic equation. So let us see how our rectangle looks like now. All right, let us see how our rectangle looks like. Now can you think what would be the dimension of this new rectangle formed? Of course, it is x minus 1 and the other dimension is x plus 2. So therefore, as we have already said earlier, the dimensions represent the factors. So we have the factors of x square plus x minus 2 as x plus 2 and x minus 1. Now, next let us try to see factoring quadratic expression using algebraic model. Now, what do you think is an algebraic model? Let us first create our algebraic model. A quadratic equation which is in standard form ax square plus bx plus c form, it can be written in factored form as ax plus b and cx plus d. These two factors ax plus b and cx plus d are unknown. So, first draw a rectangle, divide it into 4 parts, represent the unknown factors ax plus b and cx plus d as the dimension of our rectangle. To get the model, we call it as algebraic model, you simply multiply the two dimensions. So, after multiplying the dimensions and taking out the common term x, our algebraic model would be AC x square plus AD plus BC the whole x plus BD. So, we are going to use this algebraic model to find the factor of a quadratic equation. So, let us try to find the factor for x square plus 2x minus 3 using this model. There are 5 steps. First, we compare the given equation, that is x square plus 2x minus 3, to the model AC x square plus AD plus BC the whole x plus BD to find the value of AC and BD. So, when we compare, you can see the value, the coefficient of x square on the both side, AC corresponds to 1. Similarly, the term BD on the left hand side corresponds to negative 3. Next, we can find the possible values for AC and BD. So, as AC equals to 1, what do you think would be the value for A and C? So, the list is given. A and C can be negative 1, because the product will still be 1, or it can be 1 and 1, which still gives the product 1. Similarly, the value for BD equals to negative 3. So, the possible value for B and D could be the following. Now, next we can again use our model to compare our equation to find the coefficient of x, that is AD plus BC. So, here when we compare the coefficient of x term, that is AD plus BC, corresponds to 2. So, AD plus BC equals to 2. So, next here we have to use hit and trial method to find the possible values for A, C, B and D, whereby you can plug in the value to AD plus BC, which should give you 2, and find a combination that works. So, here if you plug in A equal to 1, C equal to 1, B equal to negative 1 and D equal to 3, then this combination perfectly works. So, the next what we can do is simply replace A, B, C, D term in the factored form, that is Ax plus B, Cx plus D. So, when you replace the factors Ax plus b, Cx plus d will be x minus 1 and x plus 3. Now, next we have is factoring quadratic expression by decomposition method. So, there are 5 steps. So, have a quick look at the steps. First, we have to rewrite our given equation in standard form, that is ax square plus bx plus c form. Next, we have to find two numbers whose product will be a times c and whose sum will be equal to b. And after that, we can rewrite the middle term of our expression using those two numbers. And after that, from each pair we can take out the common factor, and then lastly we find the common factor. Let us try to solve 2x square plus x equal to 6 using decomposition method. All right. So, here you have your quadratic equation, that is 2x square plus x equal to 6. Let us use decomposition method to find the factors. Now, first thing that should be in your mind is to write this in standard form. So, that is ax square plus bx plus c equal to 0 form. 2x square plus x minus 6 equal to 0. So, next we can find two numbers whose product will be a times c and whose sum will be equal to b. So, before that, let us identify a, b and c. So, here the coefficient of x square, that is a, will be 2, coefficient of x, that is b, will be equal to 1. If there is no number, then the coefficient is obviously 1, and your coefficient of the c corresponds to negative 6. So, we have to find two numbers. We have to find two numbers whose product will be a times c and whose sum will be equal to b. So, in this case, a times c, that is 2 times negative 6, 2 times negative 6 will be equal to negative 12, and then your b is equal to 1. So, find two numbers whose product will be negative 12 and then sum will be 1. So, what can possibly be those two numbers? Now, you can find the factors of 12 and then we can try to add and then see whether you are getting the product equal to negative 12 and then sum equal to 1. So, if you take 4 and negative 3, if you take 4 and negative 3, the product of 4 and negative 3, that is 4 times negative 3 will be 12, and then 4 plus negative 3 will be 1. So, which means you can take 4 and negative 3. This can be the two numbers. Now, next what we can do is we can rewrite this middle term. You have 2x square plus x minus 6 equal to 0. So, rewrite this middle term using those two numbers that we have found out. So, your equation will be 2x square plus, now this middle x, we can split this into two terms, that is 4x minus 3x. So, because of this, we call this as decomposition method. X has been decomposed into 4x and minus 3x. Then you have minus 6 equal to 0. So, next we can find the common factor for first pair and then the common factor for the other pair. So, 2x square plus 4x, the common factor is 2x. So, what is left is only x is left, plus in the second term 2 is left. So, similarly from the next pair negative 3x minus 6, when you take out the common factor, that is negative 3. So, what is left is x plus 2, because negative 3 times positive 2 will be negative 6 equal to 0. So, now you can factor out the common factor, that is x plus 2. So, that will be x plus 2, and then we have 2x minus 3. So, these two are the factors of 2x square plus x equal to 6. So, this is how we use decomposition method in factoring a quadratic equation. Okay. Now, finally, let us move on to solving quadratic equation by factoring. Till now, we were looking on the strategies how to factor our quadratic equation. Now, let us try to see solving quadratic equation by factoring. So, there are 4 steps. First one, we can write the quadratic equation in standard form, and next we can use any of the factoring strategies to find the factors, and after that we can use zero product rule, and then the last one, set each factor equal to 0 and solve for the variable x. So, zero product rule states that if product of factors is 0, then at least one factor must be 0. Now, let us try to see one example stepwise. We have x square plus 16 equals to 10x. Now, first thing is write it in standard form. So, that is in ax square plus bx plus c equal to 0 form. Next, we can use factoring strategies to find the factor. So, we assume that we have used any of the given 3 strategies that we have discussed, and we have found out the factors, that is x minus 2 and x minus 8. Now, here we use zero product rule. So, we said if the product of two number is 0, then at least one of the number must be 0, which is the zero product rule. So, either x minus 2 is 0 or x minus 8 is 0. And then finally, set each factor equal to 0 and solve for the variable. So, we can set x minus 2 equal to 0, therefore, we get x equal to 2. Similarly, x minus 8 equal to 0 means x will be equal to 8. All right. Let us try to solve x square plus 10 equal to 7x using a factoring method. So, here first thing we need to keep in our mind is to write this equation in standard form, that is ax square plus bx plus c equal to 0 form. So, this equation is in standard form. Now, let us use decomposition method to solve this. So, when we use decomposition method, we have to have two numbers. We have to find two numbers whose product will be a times c. So, whose product will be 1 times 10. So, that will be equal to 10. And then the two numbers the sum should be equal to b. So, that is negative 7 in this case. So, let us find those two numbers whose product is 10 and whose sum is negative 7. So, if you take negative 2 and negative 5, you can try whether negative 2 and negative 5 the product is 10 and the sum is 7 or not. So, now let us rewrite x square minus 7x, we can split into two parts. We can decompose it into minus 2x minus 5x plus 10 equals to 0. So, next what we can do is you can take out the common factor from the first pair. So, the common term out here is x. So, what is left is x minus 2. Similarly, from this pair when you take out the common term, that is negative 5, the number that is left out is x minus 2. So, that is equal to 0. Now, you can write your common factor. So, here we have common factor x minus 2 and then x minus 5. So, that will be equal to 0. So, this is where you are applying decomposition method. Now, next step we can use zero product rule. Now, zero product rule says if A times B is 0, then either A must be 0 or B must be 0. So, any one of them must be 0. So, here if x minus 2 times x minus 5 is 0, either x minus 2 will be 0 or x minus 5 will be 0. So, if x minus 2 is 0, which means x will be equal to positive 2, or if x minus 5 is 0, then x will be equal to 5. So, here x equal to 2 and x equal to 5, these two are the solution of the quadratic equation x square minus 7x plus 10. In other words, we can also call this as the roots or the x intercepts, because when you draw a graph of a quadratic equation, x equal to 2 and then x equal to 5 are represented by the two x intercepts where your graph is crossing your x axis. So, with this we have come to the end of my lesson. Now, let us try to see what we have learned today. To summarize, first we have is factoring using algebra tiles, then we have factoring using algebraic model, then we have seen factoring by decomposition method, and finally we have seen solving quadratic equation using a decomposition method in this case. So, lastly, as said, I hear, I forget, I see, I remember, and I do, I understand. So, on this note, let me assign you some questions so that you can do this question for a deeper understanding of what I have delivered today. Thank you for watching this lesson. See you next time.